Why is this car making another noise? All right, great comments in the last video. We kicked it around a little more, came up with some, and I'm not an expert on this. I had different opinions on it in the past. You know, I was the gold, silver, ammo, all that stuff, and that's fine. But a lot of those things are hard to get right now, and I really don't trust the. I think the silver and all that stuff, things have to get really bad because they manipulated. When I had gold, they were manipulating. I think 2013, 14, it should have been $2,000, and I had to sell some at $700. That really pissed me off. But that's a great place to store your cash. But I wrote this down. Like I said, we were just spitballing on this idea, just to give you some other examples. I said we had, let's say we had a $50,000. Say that was the chunk. I had a friend that bought seed, a lot of seed, but not like the stuff you plant in your backyard. This would be alfalfa and oat hay. Most of it came they transfer it in, they put in plastic 55-gallon drums, stores very easily as long as you keep it dry, out of sunlight. But for people that do that for a living, or you're around people like that, he had a place where he could move it and sell it without taking too much of a loss. He might not be gaining interest on it, but if something were, if it came to that point, he had alfalfa seed, he could grow alfalfa. Okay. But we're talking, 55-gallon drum. These guys would have 30 drums. But they had storage. All these ideas here I have pretty much take storage. But most of them are non-perishables. But because now if you're living in downtown New York, you can't do too much with alfalfa seed. Okay? Because you're not going to, it's of no use there. So everything is regional and depending on you. But I thought that wasn't a bad idea. This guy stored up a lot of seed. Enough, I think, that would get him through 3 seasons or something like that. So alfalfa, oats, that kind of thing. Another one I thought of, and you can do this in 55-gallon drums as well, where I think you get a little more savings. I haven't bought a 55-gallon drum of motor oil in a long time, but there was a time when we did that. But you could spend $1,000 on motor oil pretty easy. And I think it has a pretty good shelf life. And as long as it works in the automobile that you have, or let's say you have 30 weight, or a very common, Hondas are a little different, but a very common weight, you could buy $1,000 or $2,000 worth of oil and manage storing it without a whole lot of difficulty, I think. Okay. Every time I go to Walmart, the Walmart grocery store, I pick up a gallon of Rotella, because I put that crap in everything. And it's always cheapest there. Another one, and there's a motor oils, grease, something like grease. You could stock up on grease. Yeah, but how much grease would I use? Well, it depends on, I have friends that are machine shops and do maintenance and this kind of stuff. They use a ton of grease. I have a lot of guys in 2.5-ton trucks out here that's what they are. They're greasers. They go out to the big equipment and grease it. They have a use for it. That would be something they would store if like I said, depends on where you're at. Food oils. That's another one. You could spend $1,000 on food oils real easy. You can buy that stuff in bulk. Corn oil, canola oil, that crap, all that kind of stuff. You can. Vegetable oil. You can spend $1,000 on vegetable oil pretty easy. Maybe not so non-perishable. If it gets hot, I don't know so much about that, but you could spend $1,000 on that pretty darn easy and hold it for a while. I would think. I could be wrong. Here's another one, and I think this is, because we don't have this problem now. We've never had this problem. But it's something that you can use, you can move. It is bulky, but by God, you can't live without it. Sugar and salt. And you can buy that in bulk. You can stack that in 55-gallon drums. I know, because I have one. I have a ton of salt. But that's something that you can sell it. Maybe not that easily, but just like it may not be the best example, but hard times, sugar and salt's a good commodity to have. And another one, you've heard this one before, is nails. Like hammer and nail. I think there's 3 size nails you use to build a house. I'll go back to when I remember back when right prior to the last recession when they were even talking about it, it was starting to roll out. I could buy, what do they call it, PDX or PDX plywood, that chip glue stuff that you use for everything. It was $7 a sheet for like 3 weeks. And I kept saying, dude, you gotta buy, because I use that stuff a lot. But I easily, because I had a truck and trailer, I could have loaded up enough plywood to build a home, a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom home, and stored it. I have yet to see that stuff below $18 a sheet since then. And you can put it on Craigslist and sell it tomorrow. Unless it's still in good shape, you know. Another easy one too is solar panels. I have kicked myself in the ass. I keep saying I'm going to do it, solar, but I'm looking into an off-grid power source, and so I gotta just get off my butt. And that was the thing. I was supposed to do that all winter, and I didn't even start. But I did talk to a guy a couple days ago about an off-grid water well. Not necessarily a place to park your money, but just on a side note, I have a well out here that we no longer use, 125 feet deep, has water in it, and they do an ag setup where it's just, as long as the sun's up, the thing runs all day. Large tanks fill them up, and you got your secondary water source. So I'm definitely going to do that. But solar panels, you can buy solar panels, which have really come a long way, but they're still useful. Even if other technology came on in another year or two, they still have their value. I know solar guys in the solar business that they store a lot of their money into the solar panels, because you know that's what they do. But you could yourself could buy solar panels. They don't take up a lot of space, and they hold their value. Another one, I thought this was kind of interesting, but let's see, all this stuff takes storage. Another one was tires. If not to be, I mean, you could spend $1,000 on tires real easy. Enough for your car, your wife's car, whatever the case is, if you have the ability to do that. And that's another thing. I see on Craigslist, I don't know how many times I've seen on Craigslist, the manual tire changers. You know, the guys put in there and pop tires off. There's a skill to have. Boy, without the tools, it's a mother. It can be done. But tires, and you think, well, they'll sell you, Dan, you're talking about $50,000 and you're only going to buy $1,000 for the tires. Well, I've already spent $1,000 on seed, $1,000 on motor oil, $1,000 on food oil, $1,000 on sugar, $1,000 on salt, $1,000 on nails, $1,000 on solar panels. I don't have much to have $50,000 left in my little scheme here. Okay. Off-grid water, I talked about that. Here's another one, and this is something that rental space living quarters. This may turn a lot of people off, but I live in a large space out here. Okay, I live in a little trailer. I got water. I got a brand new septic system we put in a couple years ago, and mysteriously it has 4 hookups to it, which means you could park 4 RVs out here. We got plenty of water, plenty of power, and a septic system that'll take it all. And as part of that was my dad's deal. So let's open this thing up. If something ever happens, you could house family members in the trailers or whatever the case is. You have access to septic, water, and power. Or you might have that little space behind the house, the fourth, whatever the case is. People have to live somewhere. I know that would turn a lot of people off. If you live in a tract home, that's not going to work with. And that has nothing to do with your $50,000. But you can spend it on that now, setting yourself up. I spent all that money a couple years ago. And I mentioned plywood. But I mean, even if half these ideas are bad, and you spend $1,000 on each one of them, that's still $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 place. That takes a lot of storage. Like I said, I'm just spitballing this stuff here. I don't have a perfect answer to any of this. If there was one thing, I think I mentioned this in the previous video. I had a friend that bought 4-inch and 6-inch PVC pipe. A 4-inch PVC pipe, a stick of that is 22-something feet long. You buy it on the back of a truck and trailer deal, and but these were like, I think at the time you might have paid $40 a stick for that, and he bought hundreds of them. But because what he does, he goes out, puts in irrigation systems, specifically using like 3 sizes. Business is okay. If it took him 10 years to use all that pipe, okay, he bought it ahead of time. So he had that was the ideal situation I'm thinking of. If it's something you're using anyway, whether it's your business or personal, if it's something you could buy so much of it ahead of time and ride it out. And you could always sell it. PVC pipe, you can always get rid of PVC pipe. You might take a little discount, but as long as it's clean, you had to store it. But that's what he did. So he put his money in that. And in his case, the price of PVC pipe went up because it follows oil for the most part. Anyhow, I'm just spitballing here. I just threw that out. I just remember back in the day when I could have bought, and was it? It might have been 2007, but I could have bought a ton of plywood that I could have sold not long after and made good money on it. But stuff like that, you could put your money into something like that. But the point is, would I put $50,000 into plywood? No, that would probably be difficult. But I could put 1,000 here, 1,000 here, 1,000 here, 1,000 here, as long as I had the storage, and these are non-perishables. And if worse came to worse, I could eat them. I could use it. Anyhow, 11 minutes. That's enough of that. Love you. God bless.